Welcome to Engaging Culture, a podcast presented by Bridgeway Christian Church. I'm Brian Kiley. On this episode, Pastor Lance Hahn and I welcome youth motivational speaker Sami Kader to the program. Sami's mission is to build self-respect and confidence in our youth by teaching them how to lead a happy and healthy life. We'll talk about all that and a whole bunch more on this episode of Engaging Culture. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 20 of the Engaging Culture Podcast. I'm Brian Kiley with Pastor Lance Hahn, who has not been here for the last couple episodes.
I know. Everybody misses me, right?
Everybody
Don't you think?
Misses you.
In my own head, I make sure that everyone misses me.
That's right.
Yeah, because then I just feel better about myself. If everyone's like, man, I didn't even notice you were gone, that'd be a drag.
That would be a drag.
Yeah, so I am here, yes.
Glad to have you back.
Yep.
And very excited to have Sami Kader here. Sami, thanks so much for being part of Engaging Culture. We appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is exciting. I'm ready.
So, okay, real quick backstory on my experience with what Sami does, and we're going to get into all of this throughout the episode. But so my kids attend 12 Bridges Elementary School, Lincoln, California, and I heard about this thing called Sami Circuit, and of course you're hearing about it from your children, and you know, the way they describe things is you're never really sure how.
Most people think it's Sammy's Circus.
Right. Where
their
are the
kids go home.
elephants?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm hearing about this thing, and I hear that there's family night, and all I understand is it's like, okay, something like fitness related, and you can come out with your family and everything else, and I'm like, okay, that's great. Like I'm down to. We try to be a part of the school, participate in what's going on, and like to do family stuff and everything else. So I'm going. I'll be honest, I'm a little skeptical because like sometimes you go to stuff like if you guys have children, sometimes you end up at stuff that's a little bit cheesy, and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, yawner.
I don't know about this.
What do we do?
Yeah.
So I walk in to the cafeteria at 12 Bridges Elementary School, and from the moment I walked in, it was incredible. The whole thing, and I'm not just saying, I was telling a friend this last night at dinner. The whole thing was one of the coolest kids events or family events I had ever been to. So many things that were positive about it. So anyway, I'm a huge fan of yours, Sami, and just really appreciate what you do, and I'm excited to be able to talk with you about it.
Oh, thanks,
today.
man. This puts a smile on my face to hear that.
And I got to confirm this. He came into my office and told me about how awesome it was. So it's not like he's just making this up for the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Man, he was pumped.
Yeah,
and he was like, man, what a great guy and what an amazing program. So anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm a
big
fan. Love what you do. So before we get into what Sami Circuit is and how that all works, can you share with us just a little bit of kind of your story? Because it's part of what you share in your program with young people, but you've got a story that kind of is behind a lot of what you do.
Well, it really has to do with when I was in school when I was a kid. When I go in, I'll kind of tell you the kid version right now. I had a tough time in school. Kids started making fun of me at a very young age. I just didn't fit in very well, and I always remember feeling like really awkward about who I was. You know, just I felt different, and it wasn't a good different because, you know, at that age, kids let me know like, you know, who I was not like them. Who I was, I started believing was not correct. You know, and so you grow up, you know, third grade, fourth grade, you try to laugh about it. You know, if you're laughing with them, it's not as bad as them just laughing at you.
Right.
But then you get into middle school and you realize like the rejection from girls, the rejection from all your peers. Just
brutal.
Yeah, it gets really tough. And you start believing the words that they're saying.
Yeah.
You know, before, you know, hey, you know, they call you names and you kind of laugh it off and you act like it's not happening. But when you get into middle school, you find I found myself starting to call myself the same names that kids were calling me.
Yep, adopt the identity.
Yeah, like you dummy, you are stupid, you are ugly. You know, you start looking at yourself and you start affirming all those words that you've heard from everybody else because it must be true.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Why would they say it if it wasn't?
Yeah. I mean, and it's all you know at that age.
Yes.
And so that's what I call like that negative voice, which we'll get to, you know, later probably, is that, you know, you're no good, you can't do it, don't even try, give up. And, you know, when it came to sports, that was the thing, right? All the guys are playing sports, girls, you know, if you're good at sports, that's a good way to make friends. So I tried that, humiliated myself many times. I just wasn't coordinated, and I had started gaining a lot of weight at a young age. Mm-hmm. So when a lot of these avenues weren't working for me, the couch became like my safe place.
Absolutely.
You know, I can go there. I can sit on that couch, you know, watch TV. Nobody was going to mess with me there. eating junk food, and I started drinking like 5-6 sodas a day, just, sitting on the couch, not really knowing what to do. Kids were making fun of me at school, and things at my home were kind of getting a little, my dad moved away 20 minutes away from our home. Parents got divorced. And so I didn't really know who to turn to.
Right.
I had 2 sisters and my mom, and my mom was working at the night shift trying to support her family, and she didn't want to move out of the house we had in the suburbs. She wanted to keep us where we were to have stability. So she had her hands full.
Yep.
And so we were just kind of trying to figure it out. Well, by the time I was 15 years old, I reached about 300 pounds. Mm-hmm. My hair grew it down past my shoulders, covered my face, chains hanging from the jeans. I stared at the ground every day. I didn't want to look up. If I looked up, maybe somebody'd make fun of me or say something. Yeah. That negative voice in my head got really strong to the point where I was, wondering why I was even here anymore. Yeah. That story. And right at that point, my sister knew a guy, a family friend. He came into my life, and he was a tough guy, but he had the gym. It's how he got rid of all his pain and anger. And he went through a lot of tough times before that, but he realized that's how he was going to let out his frustrations and his pain. And so he said, "Sammy, you're coming with me to the gym." And I said, "No, I'm not." Right. I was the kid that was shut off from everybody. I stopped wanting to go to school at that point. And he said, nobody said no to him. He said, "You're getting off the couch." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not." Finally, he literally grabbed a hold of me. And it was a 3-day battle, actually, to tell you the truth. It was a 3-day battle, but he won. And I'm so glad that he did, because he saved my life.
Yeah.
Every day we went to the gym together. He'd come by, he'd pick me up. And I always think back, why did he give up on me? Because I said some terrible things to this guy. Yeah. I hated everybody. I hated myself, number one. Right. Mm-hmm. And I wanted him to leave me alone, but he wouldn't leave me alone. He kept coming back. "Sammy, come on, we're going. You're not giving up. You're not quitting. Keep going." Well, we exercised together. And after a couple months, he became my best friend, my father, my brother I didn't have. Yep. He became that figure for me. And sooner or later, I started jumping up when I saw his truck come, because, he loved me. He cared about me, and you feel that. Yeah. Yep. And he didn't just say, like everyone else just said, "Hey, never give up. Good luck with that." Yep. "Hey, you got to believe in yourself." Well, I didn't know how to believe in myself. Yeah. I'd never even had the tools to even begin to believe in myself. So he said, "Come with me," and he did. His actions spoke loud. Yeah. And we went every day. And after a year, I lost 100 pounds, but I didn't realize it at the time. The biggest change came from within. Right. Instantaneously, people treat you differently. You lose 100 pounds, everyone's treating you differently, especially at that age. Yeah. And now I had friends, all the kids that made fun of me for 4, 5, 6 years, they started, "Hey, can we, coming around wanting to be my friend all of a sudden," and that felt really good. But I started to the main thing was I made a lot of mistakes. Obviously, we all do. But the big thing was that I didn't want to give up anymore. So, yeah. So that's kind of.
Now, let me just highlight something. For those of you that are not watching online, live here, let me explain something to you. When you see this dude, you are not thinking any of this stuff, right? So first of all, I already hate him for his jaw structure. Like, he already has better bone structure than I do. I'm just pointing this out. And so I'm looking at this guy, and he's obviously very fit and everything, and super good-looking guy. But once again, it reminds you that you don't know what kind of stuff is playing in people's heads. Even when you see a young child that they look like they should have everything together, you don't know what internal dialogue is going on. Yeah. And so being able to either reach out, and even if they're a little bit like a wounded animal, that they're just going to lash out at you and just go, I don't want anyone to touch me right now. Like, I hurt inside, and I just don't want to talk about it. And I want to, for that guy to keep pressing through and to spend time with you and spend time with, man, that's so cool.
Yeah, to have somebody invest in you in that way.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's pretty special.
Well, we kind of needed each other. He came from a rough home life, and I can't say, it's hard to say that about your own, but things were tough on my side.
Yep. Sure.
And when we came together, it's almost like what I did for him and he did for me. It kind of, in the end, you look back and it matched up. You know?
Yeah, that's cool.
And yeah, we became best friends, and even more than that. And you never forget when somebody does something like that for you.
No way. Yeah, that's life changing.
Yeah. And
so then fast forward, and you start this program called Sami Circuit.
Yeah.
What was the motivation behind getting that going?
Well, the cool thing about it was that it's not like I just said, I'm going to start this thing.
Yeah.
You know, it happened organically. It happened the right way. It kind of snuck up on me. I knew, you know, from what I went through, I became a trainer right out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought I'd be a trainer. At the time, it was always the real buff guys.
Right.
And, you know, that's not me. I could never be like them. But at that age, you know, that seems cool. You're like,
Totally.
you know, but one of them, they had a trainer interview day, and I went to it and I told them my story, and they looked at the pictures and they said, "That's not you." And I'm like, "Yeah, I went." And they're like, "You're hired." And you know, so it's almost like everything that I've done in my life, it's like the bubble's there and I get in and then I fill the bubble. I don't believe I can do it, but I step into it, and then sooner or later you gain the confidence.
Yes.
Like you just
awesome.
act the part until you actually believe that you can do it. And that happens from other people believing in you. Some people they say, "Well, what if they don't have somebody to believe in them the way that you did?" And I always think about that, because I always believe that somebody will step up when you're ready. You know, when, like, you know, somebody that you least expect comes in your life. Well, I started being this trainer, and within 2 or 3 years, I was the most busy trainer in the gym, you know,
Right.
and because I related, people didn't want to get buff. They wanted to deal with the emotional side of weight loss. And that's what I could do.
Yeah.
I understood what it felt like. I had a lady, she became one of my best friends. She wouldn't walk through the gym. She was 300 pounds, 5 feet tall. She wouldn't walk through the gym unless I had my arm around her, you know?
Yeah.
And when we came together, she just knew that I knew how it felt. And so she felt comfortable around me. And I had so many people that kind of, in different ways, that was the relationship, you know? And I really cared about people. I didn't see them for their weight. I just saw the person.
That's right.
And I think that's what really brought me forward in that respect. Well, 10 years I spent around people that were 20, 30 years older than me, just listening and learning, because that was one thing I was good at. But I still had a very low self-esteem. You lose 100 pounds, but that doesn't change everything, right?
Yeah.
You still, and I'll tell you, if it wasn't for that job, I probably would have gained my weight back.
Yep.
The reason why I didn't was because my whole goal when I lost the weight was that I wanted people to like me. Mm-hmm. You know, I saw these kids that were popular at school, and so you want that. You go, you know, they're happy. They, you know, they have friends. They, you know, so this popularity thing when you're younger. And so I lost the weight and I gained the friends, but there was still a big hole, a big empty, just feeling inside. So throughout my years at the gym, I knew that if I gained weight, everyone would be looking at me. And so I was always on display, always in front of hundreds and hundreds of people every day. It was a very busy place. And so I always kept saying, you know, you got to keep the weight off. You got to keep the weight off. But I was still very, empty on the inside. People would say, you look like a good looking guy. And I'd look around. And wonder who they're talking about.
Right.
Because you still see that, that person that you believed was there. And so, long story short, you know, like I said, I got to get to the point because I can just go on about this. At the gym, 10 years, and just saying, you know, just getting confidence in myself, building up that confidence, putting myself in uncomfortable positions, like this one right now.
Yeah.
There's not a day that goes by that I don't get scared about speaking in front of people, because most of my humiliation came in front of groups of people.
Sure.
In high school, I went into a assembly with 1,000 kids, and one girl stands up and says, "It's Sami Kader, the Fatnator." That was what they called me, Sami Kader, the Fatnator. They realized it rhymed with my last name, Sami Kader. So the Terminator was big at the time. Sami Kader, the Fatnator. That's who I was. So she stands up. She says that. I have 1,000 people laughing at me, humiliating. And, you know, you don't forget about those moments.
No way.
So anytime I would get out in front of people, I would have these physiological reactions, sweat, redness, just freaking out. So overcoming that, like, I always wanted to share my story. 10 minutes later, I'll get back to the question you asked me. I always wanted to share my story, but the problem was I was so afraid to get up in front of anybody. Yeah. So 10 years in a gym, people building me up, saying, "Sami, you can do it. Sami, come on." Well, I finally had enough courage. I met my amazing wife. Her name's Megan. And there's always a great person behind the scenes that's, you know, she was always pumping me up. You can do it. And here's the story that you wanted to know. She called a start Sacramento Start program. It was an after-school program. I told her about my dream. I wanted to speak in front to kids, share my story. Well, she calls them behind my back because I kept saying, I'm not ready, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. She calls them and says, my husband's a motivational speaker and he wants to volunteer.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, great, we never get those. So I show up and she tells me, I go, what did you do? I'm not ready, I'm not ready. You are ready. So I show up, I did that first day, and afterwards she comes to me and she goes, so your wife said you were a motivational speaker, right? And I was like, oh, I promise I can do better. I just had a bad day. And then I went home with that pain of failing.
Yep.
And I worked on it and went back and I got a little better. But yeah, that's kind of how it was 10 years later that it took me that long to have enough courage to step out.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Well, and I think it's amazing. You watch You Do What You Do, and there's tons of confidence behind it, at least from an audience perspective, right? And I think about, I don't know, so many things in life. You and I are public speakers, obviously.
Yeah.
We're speaking in front of people all the time. And you'll hear people say things like, oh, well, you just make it look easy.
Yeah.
And on some level, with practice and discipline and experience, things become easier. But it's so easy to look at somebody, to like watch you do what you do and be like, oh, well, this must come real natural to him. And man, he's just got it all together. And you hear like, no, actually, this is terrifying. And I just think there's something to be said for recognizing, hey, behind the polished presentation, there's years and years of struggle and effort and trying to develop and things like that. And I think that can just build an appreciation for the fact that, watching somebody in front of you, like that's a real human with a real story as well. So now for those who have not experienced Sami Circuit, just describe kind of briefly, give an overview of what goes on at a Sami Circuit assembly or a Sami Circuit family night.
Well, the kids show up and I do the traditional, assembly. The motivational assembly, it's not anti-bully, it's pro self-esteem, self-respect.
Yeah.
I want to tell the kids about, what I want them to do, not the opposite. And a lot of times you talk about bullying and things like that, and it gives them ideas. You talk about it, you get more of what you talk about. So I talk about my story, and then after my story, I talk about that negative voice. Sammy, give up. Sammy, you can't do it. Well, then the negative voice interrupts the assembly. And he goes, oh, Sammy. And you can ask your kids about it. They remember that voice. And he goes, the kids don't want to hear what you have to say. And the kids come to my defense. Yeah, we do.
Oh, that's
so that voice and I are kind of battling. And ultimately, the kids help me to win and get that negative voice out. And we replace the negative voice with the positive words. You got this. And that's my tagline. You can do it. Never give up. All those positive words. You're amazing. And self-respect is saying good words to yourself, good words to other people. Yeah. So the kids then start taking those taglines and delivering them to all the kids around them. Look at the person next to you. Tell them you got this. Point at your teachers. Tell them you're amazing. That kind of thing. And then we talk about eating healthy makes you happy. Exercise makes you happy. Who wants to exercise right now? And then from that point, they come back on my second visit. They come in to imagine your kindergarten through fifth grader in a nightclub. And that's what it is. Yep. A nightclub with exercise. They come into the Sami Circuit experience. The lights turn off. They get wristbands. They get into teams. And then I've got my own music mix with all my voice recordings. Switch it up. You got this. Keep going, And so every 45 seconds they hear switch it up. The lights are off. All the club lights are pumping. I used to have a smoke machine that was, and that was cool. But, with all the laws now, the fire marshal shut me down. But the kids don't notice it because the heart's there. And, I used to, the best thing was getting rid of that because now I'm not focusing on pressing a button.
Yep.
Now I'm focusing on looking at a kid, connecting, giving them a high five, telling them I believe in them, telling them, you're, and that's the heart of what it is. So through this experience, I heard it actually just now before I left 12 Bridges. One of the kids came up to me. He was in first grade. He goes, Sammy, this was the best day of my life.
Oh.
That's awesome.
And he really said that to me. It's funny, right before I walked out the door to come here. And you think about that, and what always drives me is that, that was exercise.
Yes.
And that was those positive words that, this experience, the way I always say is that it overloads their mind. It overloads their senses because imagine if you were in a nightclub when you were kindergarten or first grade, right? You're looking around and you're like, whoa, and then you're exercising and then you're hearing, you got this, keep going, all these great words. And they're words that are etched into their mind through this experience, and that's why I love doing it.
Yeah.
When parents come to the family night, I hear more than anything, they go, "I wish I had this when I was younger."
Right.
Yeah.
And I do too.
Well, so recently, one of our friends was hanging out at our house, and they took my daughter aside and they said, "Your family is super affirming." That's just a weird reality. Because basically in our household, we're constantly, I don't know whether or not everybody in our family is addicted to credit. They all want to go, I did something awesome, right? Look how I put my fork down, but we're constantly complimenting each other. And they said, you do realize that's not normal, right?
Yeah.
And to us, it's super normal.
Yeah.
But you got to imagine that the majority of kids in their home lives do not have that affirmation.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they get to walk into Sami Circuit and they're like, dude, I suddenly feel like $1 million. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And that is transforming because to someone else that has that a lot, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you give them that, I wouldn't say give them, you shed the light on that personal power.
Right.
And to do that at a young age, I go, hey, look, you have the power to do that for your family.
Right.
Don't go home and wait for your family or your mom or your dad to say that you got to be the one. Go home and be that positive voice for them.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing. I hear so many times parents, saying, give me a couple stories. Well, at this point, I see over 50,000 kids a year. I'm getting little messages all the time. And it's really cool to hear these messages from parents saying, I had a terrible day.
Yep.
I came home and the first thing my kids said was, hey, mommy, I believe in you. Never give up. And, when your kids say those words and where did they come from?
Yeah.
And it means a lot. It means a lot. So the kids have the power.
Yeah.
And you give them that power at a young age or shed the light on it. And it's a great thing. I love seeing that.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's so many things that are amazing about what you do. And I think what struck me when I got to come out to family night last year was, I walk into this room and you're right. It felt like a nightclub. There's lights and music and all this stuff. It's like, whoa, okay, there's a lot going on here. Is that so number one, you're encouraging families to be together, which, it's always a good thing, right? Just when families can get together and experience something collectively, that's a net positive. Were you going to say something? Sorry.
Well, going off that point of empowerment, after that second visit I was talking about where they do the experience, the third visit is, I do this thing where I go, Sami Circuit's over. And the kids go, no. And then the teacher interrupts me and she's got a note. She goes, Sami, I've got a note from the office. You've got to read this right now. And I go, but I'm saying goodbye to the kids. It's over. And she goes, no, it's not. You got to read this note. So I read this note in front of the kids and, I'm doing a little show. I'm reading it. And I go, guess what? It's not over. Family night is coming next week, and I go, you got to go home. You got to inspire your families. And I go, hey, when Ronnie tried to, the guy who came in and helped me, when he tried to get me off the couch, did I say yes? And they go, no. He motivated me. Go home, motivate your family, inspire your family. So then they go home. And the family nights, every school's different, but we get about 200 to 300 people that come out to these things. Yeah. And, the school goes, nobody comes to family nights. You'll be lucky if you get 30 or 40 people. I go, it's not me. The kids are going to go home and they're going to do the work. Yeah. And they do. They bring their families out. And it's so cool to see it, but they do that. They inspire their families. And I have parents say, there's no way they would have let me miss this night.
Right.
I tried. I told them I don't want to exercise. And when they come in for that family night, the parents always do the same thing. They go against the back wall.
That's right.
And then some of them get their phone out and they go, okay, another one of these family night events. I've got a lot of work to do. I've got a lot of things going on. And then next thing you know, when I start talking, I let them know that there's a couple things that matter to me. First of all, exercise is not number one. Yeah. The number one thing to me is that when your kids look to their left, they look to their right, they see you. Yeah. Because it's not, if you had asked me 8 years ago when I started this, is it about exercise? I would have said, yeah, it's about exercise. But I could tell you, I've got 3 kids now.
Yeah.
6, 3, and 1. And we actually have one on the way. Number 4 is coming.
Congratulations.
Awesome. And, you know, the time that we don't have, because we get so busy with work and life, when we come together on those family nights, really it's about the time that we get to spend with our family, like quality time.
Yeah.
So I tell parents, if you can give your kids a high five, you're doing it right.
Yeah. Amen.
I'll never come. I'm not that guy. I'll never come up to you and say, "Hey, that push-up's wrong," or "Hey, you call that a sit-up?" What, you know? I said the exercise. I could care less. Your kids are going to be moving, having a great time, and when they want to share that experience with somebody, they're going to look over. They're going to see you. I said, so if you don't want to jump, you can step. If you don't want to step, then you can just give your kids a high five, be their biggest motivator, become their biggest cheerleader, and that's all I care about. So please come off the walls. And that usually gets about 95% of the parents off the wall. Yeah. And that's when the event really becomes more than just exercise. Yeah. And that's my whole motivation. I don't want to just exercise. Yeah. That would have gotten old years ago. Like it has to be more. And you know that feeling you get
for sure
when you get in front of people and you're connecting. There's nothing like it. It's like the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah. Well, and I think I love the kind of your approach to using exercise. I mean, you could tell even in your story about being a trainer, you can tell from what you do now that exercise is a tool, right? It's not the point. I mean, when we're exercising and taking care of ourselves, I mean, there's science behind all of that that has tons of different benefits. But at the end of the day, you're not a drill sergeant, right? Yeah. You're not correcting people's form and everything else. But you're recognizing, hey, this is an opportunity for us to speak positively to one another, to counteract the negative voice with messages of positivity, get up and move our bodies and feel good while we do it. And I love that approach because, I mean, and it's even interesting on your website and your frequently asked questions. There's the question of like, oh, is this about, weight loss and everything else? And I loved your answer to basically say like, no, this isn't a shaming thing. This isn't a you need to get fit thing, but rather it's a, hey, when you engage in these types of activities, it's just a place where we can be positive and affirming to one another, which I think is fantastic.
Well, and you know, and I'm very clear about the whole weight thing. You know, it's not about weight, and sometimes kids can take it like that. They can say, they can hear a story and they can misconstrue things, but that doesn't happen very often. I think most people understand that it's so much bigger than that. Yeah. It really is. Because I have people say, Sammy, I never had a weight problem, but I did feel those same feelings, Yeah. So to say it's about weight would just be incorrect. Right. We all have feelings that we're not good enough. We all have those feelings of something's wrong with who we are. Why am I not this way? And then, at a young age, what do? We compare ourselves,
Of course. Yeah.
And now it's even harder because kids are comparing themselves to fake people.
That's right.
People on the Instagram and people that they see and, things that aren't even real.
Yep.
Yeah.
At least we had to compare ourselves to real people.
Yeah, which limits things. Well, and I think it's interesting. I mean, in so much of what we do at church, and I think about just even in my own speaking and things that I talk about, and I think one of the ways that we can get so discouraged is to think that we're the only one, right?
Yeah.
And I believe that's like if we talk about how the ways that the enemy can get after us is making us think, oh well, everyone else has got their life together, and you're the only one. And I've just recognized in church contexts the power of people, say, sitting around a table or hearing a message or just being in an environment and realizing, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not the only one who struggles with depression. I'm not the only one whose marriage is in trouble. Heck, I'm not the only one who's been divorced or had these different things. And for people to realize, like, actually, we're all kind of wounded. And because of that, it's okay to be honest about kind of your own wounds.
That's right.
And then at the same time, as we share in those experiences together, like, we can be part of kind of helping one another heal and grow. And I think so often, you talk about some of the messages that kids receive and that teenagers receive. It can be very isolating to make them think, oh, you're these sometimes subtle and sometimes not so subtle messages that are like, you're not good enough, you're messed up, everyone else, all the popular kids are this and you're that. And to be able to counteract that with like, no, A, we're all struggling. B, you've got something good in you. You got this, as you say. I mean, I think that's just so powerful and such an important message for kids to hear.
Yeah, the whole hashtag with my book on panic disorder was hashtag you're not alone.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the point. Now, what I get to deal with is your kids grown up. right? So I get to deal.
Oh man,
I get to deal with all those same kids. The same mindsets are tracking with them as adults. And everyone assumes they have it put together now because they're adults.
Yeah.
And yet that hole is still there. The words that they heard as a child are still echoing in their head. And so I'm speaking to them a very similar message. And I'm getting them after years of it being implanted in. And the ability for you to say, listen, before this turns to cement, I want to remind you that is not true. And you know what? All those negative feelings you have inside, all those things that are telling you that you're not good enough, I'm telling you right now, I know you're going to hear a lot of voices. Listen to my voice right now. You got this. You know what I mean? So it's so beautiful because it creates this another counter voice that they can say, listen, I now have two options. Yeah. I can listen to this or I can listen to this. Before they only had negative. Yeah. Now there's an option.
So the catchphrase, you got this.
Yeah.
Where did that come from, or how did that, I mean, I can imagine what you're trying to accomplish through it, but what led you to land on that phrase specifically?
Well, when I was a trainer at the gym, I had some clients that, I talked about my dream to. And one of them worked with this lady named Laura. And Laura was extremely smart. And I didn't know this at the time, but she struggled with a lot of the same things that I struggled with growing up. Well, she was a graphic designer, and I had been writing this book, a book about my story growing up, which I've shelved. But it was how I started getting my thoughts out on paper.
Right.
And, somebody said, hey, can you help my friend make a cover for the book? So she met me. She didn't want to. And because she was always turned off by the trainer guy, there's a stereotype that goes with,
for sure.
Yeah.
with everyone that I've been fighting that stereotype my whole life.
Yeah.
And she meets with me and she says, she reads through the book and she goes, I want to help you with this. I don't have to just make so she started helping me. And every step of the way since the very beginning of Sami's Circuit, the mix that I do, everything, she has been a huge part of what I do. She's the one who helped me come up with the catchphrase, you got this. And at the time, nobody was saying it. It was 8 years ago. It was before it was in movies all the time.
Yeah.
I think she had seen it somewhere, but we were trying to come up with a clever way to say, you can do it. Keep going. You can do it. You got this was just a really cool way. And then I started saying it, and then I started putting all my Sami Circuit voice into it, which, now I don't think about it. I just do it. You got this. But when I was younger, I would say it very hesitantly because I didn't own my voice yet.
Yeah.
Totally. When you get that,
oh, yeah.
It's like, and next thing you know, you never even think about it. It just becomes your voice because you've owned it. So my Sami Circuit voice kids my kids go, you got this in their Sami Circuit voice all the time. Well, I've said you got this a million times, but I say it with ownership. I say it like, and it echoes through the microphone. You got this.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed like a very fun way to say the words that I really wanted to say. And those words were like, you can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it.
But okay, so let me dig into this for a second because it's not empty hype.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because you can always think of, hey, what's a nice thing that I can say that makes kids feel better in the moment?
Yeah.
But from what I hear from you, you believe this. And what it is saying, hey, kids, actually, you have all the raw materials. You have all the tools that you can do this. Like, this is not I'm just going to throw something at you and, hey, everything's great for you. Sky's the limit. You know what I mean? But you go, no. You got this. Everything you need.
The person who came into my life after the year he spent with me, I lost 100 pounds.
Yep.
Well, he went into the military. So he got stationed across the country. And before he left, he basically, everything changed for me.
Yep.
People wanted to be my friend. My life was good all of a sudden, or so it felt at the time, that initial.
Outwardly, yeah.
Sure.
And then he comes to me and says, hey, Sami, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And I go, no, you're not.
That's more loss.
Yeah. I know you're not leaving. And I start crying. I'll never forget. I said, you did this for me. Like, you did this for me. I am who I am because of you. You can't. And he stopped me. And he goes, the only thing that I ever did for you was tell you what was already there.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
And so I just tell kids that all the time. Everything you need, you walked in the door with already.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to thank me for anything except for just telling you what's there. You're amazing. That's never going to change. You were amazing before I met you.
That's right.
You're amazing right now. The only thing that could ever change is if you start believing the wrong things.
Yeah. Wow.
You want to, and I go, even with the little kids, you see that wristband you're wearing? What does it say? You're amazing. If you ever want to know what I would say to you, it's right there. That's 100%. I'll tell you that any day. Even when kids start aging out of Sami Circuit, when they get to like 5th or 6th grade, they start getting too cool for school.
Right.
And, you go, hey, if you see me in 10 years, I'll still tell you the same thing because in 10 years, it'll still be true.
Yeah.
And then when I see kids in middle school sometimes, they come in after it's all done. They act like it didn't matter at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And then when all their friends are gone, they'll come in. I'll be cleaning up by myself and they go, hey, thanks for what you said. And
they'll admit it when people aren't watching, right?
Yeah.
Well, and okay, so here, something that's interesting to me is like, okay, we're talking about all this positivity and affirming and telling kids they're amazing and everything else. Well, those are ideas that are not without controversy, I feel like, in our culture today, where there are a lot of people that would say, oh, well, kids are given too much, or they're given too much without earning it. There's sort of the knock on the concept of like the participation trophy, for example.
Oh, yeah.
And sort of, overly affirming kids and those saying, no, they need to work for things and it needs to be harder and everything else. And certainly there's a place for calling kids to rise to a higher level and challenging them and things like that. And I'm all for that within appropriate environments. However, I think that maybe what those that knock affirming kids miss, I mean, their concern is developing entitlement and arrogance, which is certainly valid concern. We don't want to be developing those things. But in the same way that hurt people,
yeah.
I think that affirmed people affirm people. Confident, not arrogant, confident people inspire confidence. And I would imagine, Sam, I'd just be curious to know from you, Sammy, in what way do you seek to kind of make sure that your message is one that is that kind of a message in terms of inspiring confidence that they can pass along and not sort of feeding into that, like, hey, we just tell every kid they're amazing, even without, not necessarily that, but, making every kid feel like they're the center of the world. I'm tripping over my words here, but hopefully you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. My biggest inspiration, it was Mr. Rogers. Like, I love Mr. Rogers, growing up.
I'm a huge fan, yeah.
Yeah, and so one of his biggest criticisms in about 2002, 2004 was that he built up this culture of kids where he told them they were amazing and they were okay the way they were. So they were like, oh, well, then I don't have to do anything. And that was like a lot of people that were trying to pick apart his message. Yeah. You built up this society of kids that just thought they were amazing and they didn't have to work hard. Well, I always remember reading about that. And initially I go, how could you pick apart such an amazing person and a great message? Well, I took that into what I do. Yeah. You learn from the people that pave the way, and you try to add something to it. Right. You try to make it as especially with the times changing. So I tell all the kids, like, hey, you're amazing. That's never going to change. But I go, but does that mean we're going to get to our goals? Does that mean we're going to succeed? Not if we give up. And I have these Sami Circuit water bottles. I don't know if you've heard about them.
Oh, we got some in my home.
Okay. Well, I have 2 that I give out per period, and I see about 100 to 180 kids at a time, depending on the period. So you can imagine giving out 2 of those water bottles to 2 kids, and there's 180 kids that want them. They're like the infamous water bottles. They're just plastic, but to these kids, they are the most amazing thing. You hold them up, and so the kids all want one. And I've used those water bottles to teach so many things. I go, hey, this is just plastic, but what you can't replace is that right there. And you point at their chest and you go, the heart that you have. A lot of times I give a kid a water bottle, and there's one kid that just starts crying. He wanted a water bottle too. And inside of you, you want to just grab another water bottle. Right. You want to give it to them, and you want to stop the crying, but that's going to hurt them more than it's going to help. Yeah. They start learning that all they have to do is, cry, and they're going to get something. No, I let kids know at the beginning, are these water bottles free? And that's the thing that I notice with kids. Sammy, can I have it for free? Can I have it for free? And so one of my biggest lessons is that nothing here is free. And I've given a kid a free water bottle, and I tell all the kids this story. I gave a kid a free water bottle because it was my last one. It was the end of the day. I was tired. He goes, Sammy, can I have a free water bottle? Here you go. Just take it. Well, I saw him because I came back to the school next week. And I go, where's your water bottle? And he goes, I lost it.
Right.
If it costs nothing, it's worth nothing.
Yeah. And then I also tell the story about the kid who worked hard. He told all the kids never give up, and all in his group, he worked hard. He was sweating. At the end, I called him up and I gave him that water bottle, and I told him, you earned this bottle. All his friends, all his classmates cheered him on. Well, I saw this kid a year later. I come to the school the next year. He comes up. He goes, Sammy, look, I've still got it. And this water bottle's worn out. The Sammy Circuit logo is half gone. It's been through the washing machine like 100 times, or the dishwasher 100 times. And he goes, I still have it. And you could just tell how much he valued that piece of plastic because he earned it. Yeah. So that whole thing is like, are you amazing? Yes. But does that mean we're going to succeed? It's not enough. You got to do something with it. Yeah. It's one thing to know it. It's another to actually put what we are given into action. Yeah. So if you give up, we won't go the places we're meant to go. We won't go the places we're meant to, do the things we're meant to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a principle that we teach here at Bridgeway, and that we didn't come up with it, but that we talk about in a number of different environments, and that we see modeled in Jesus's life, called invitation and challenge. And the concept behind invitation and challenge is that Jesus invited people into relationship and then challenged them to grow. That's the gist of it, basically, and that he perfectly modeled a perfect balance between those two things. Because when it's all invitation and no challenge, I think that's you're amazing and now you're entitled, right? And when it's all challenge and no invitation, it's drill sergeant, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny. I mean, I coach all my kids' sports teams. I think I'm in like my 13th season right now. And it took me till like just this fall to realize, okay, what am I trying to do here as a coach with these kids? It's invitation and challenge. Because I would have parents come to my teams that they'd complain, oh, our last coach was such a nice guy, but they didn't learn anything. Or I'd see other coaches where I'm like, okay, that guy, I don't think his kids are going to want to play for him again because he's just too hard. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is exactly what we're trying to do. In my life, just serving with young people a few hours a week, is I want invitation. Every kid gets a fist bump. Hey, how are you? Good to see you. Glad you're here. Everything else. And then every kid is getting tools where they're challenged to grow. And I recognize, I kind of in the same way that you do with exercise, I realize that sports, at the end of the day, whether we win or lose these games really doesn't matter. That it's a beautiful environment to teach and give tools that kids can use in their lives. And I think I see invitation and challenge even in what you're describing, where it's like, are you amazing? Heck yes, you're amazing. But if we're going to be successful, we got to take what's amazing in us and activate it and grow and try to be better, which I think is such a great way to balance between the two extremes of, my kid's the center of the universe and they don't ever need to be challenged. And frankly, just I think a lot of the harshness that kids can experience in some different environments.
Well, yeah, we want to protect our kids. We want to help our kids to succeed, but at the same time, if we don't let them fall down, we don't let them lose. Yeah. Like you said, the tools, losing is a great thing to learn from. It's how we get better. You can think about, with speaking in front of people. I'm sure you've had some bad speeches, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Not one that I've heard anyway.
But here's the thing: if you are where you are, I know you've delivered some great speeches, some great motivational, but you don't really remember those. But you remember the ones where you really just went in there and stunk up the place, and those are the ones that hurt and they linger, and nobody's going to save you from it. You're the only one who can build from that. Pick yourself up and say, this is not going to happen again.
Yeah.
And, those moments are the moments that we want to protect our kids from.
Yeah.
But those are really the moments where, we can be there to be like, hey, you need one arm up? Let me help you up a little bit. But man, and that's tough as a parent. I don't know the answer to that, You want to stop them from feeling that pain, but really that pain is what helps them to grow and get better.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing to balance.
So the way that God built me is that when I look at people, I see potential. That I always see people in terms of potential. And to me, potential means probability with hard work. So whenever you look at somebody, so I'm always looking at them and they're like, man, I don't have a lot going for me. I'm like, what are you talking about? All I see is how awesome you are, right?
That's the negative voice.
Yeah. And I'm like, no. All I see is what you are becoming.
Yeah.
And the idea is you become by making decisions and you become by making different choices, and you become by emerging and transforming into what God has built you to be, right? I mean, so like, for example, Bridgeway, whenever we meet new folks, I always say the same thing. You're walking into a high challenge environment. It's a high challenge environment. Now everybody knows I love them. I'm really squishy as a person. I'm super bouncy and nice, but I'm like, listen, we have a lot to do. This whole idea of I get to be my full potential but not do anything doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
We have a lot to do as like a flower unfolding, you blossom as you're emerging, but that requires a lot of effort.
Right. Yes. You can't just remain still, no effort at all, sit on the couch.
You are not your
and
full
expect
potential,
to
right?
Experience your full
That's
potential.
right.
Yeah. Well, and and then once again, invitation and challenge.
Yes.
That there's love, there's
That's it.
affirmation, there's support.
You can't just have the harshness.
With encouragement to grow.
Yep.
Now, so Sammy, we had Matthew Oliver on the podcast a while ago.
Yeah.
And he was the one who suggested we bring you on here. In fact, I think he even mentioned it in the middle of the episode.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't really talked about just your own faith journey much. Could you maybe just share a little bit about your own? I mean, he told us a little, but kind of your own experience of faith and everything else.
Well, he has a lot to do with that. And, basically, when that lady Laura I talked about, she came into my life to help me with my book.
Right.
Well, she read through it and she said, something's missing. Mm-hmm. And I go, what? No, I put it all in there. She goes, well, you don't mention your dad at all. You didn't mention him. And I go, oh, well, so she kept digging, and it ended up, I was protecting him.
Yeah.
Because I was so hurt.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when he left, you look back on it now as an adult, and I've patched things up and told him I loved him and vice versa. But at the time, I look back on that kid who was left, and sometimes I'd say left for dead because I really didn't want to live anymore.
Right.
And so as an adult, you look back and, how could you leave your kid like that? Because I needed him. I needed him so much. And so when I had the absence of him, I was raised with God. And so I God the Father, they go together.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't hate him because he was my dad, and you always want to love your dad. And so when I lost my weight, one of my big reasons to lose weight, I said popularity. That's kind of what I told myself, but I was hoping he'd come back. I was hoping, and he did show up. But it just wasn't right at that point.
Right.
So when I instead of hating my dad, I really hated God. Hated him. Why would you do this to me? Why would you stick me with this? You gave everybody else such a better life than me, and so that hatred was with me for about 10 or 15 years. Mm-hmm. Well, we can't. It's really hard to say this, so I'm going to try to say this. We can't love ourselves and hate the people that were part of who we are at the same time. Yeah. It's a contradiction.
It's with self-hatred somehow.
Yeah, it's an internal contradiction. So I'm hating God. I get older, I start hating my dad, but I'm trying to love myself at the same time, and it's not working. Yeah. And then Matt comes into my life right at the time that Laura came in and helped me, right at the time that my wife's giving me the motivational speaker call. She calls up and says he's going to, all these things are coming together, and Matt says, do I look like I'm doing a good impression of him? I want you to come speak to my church. And I go, whoa, I know I said.
Everyone stop signing me up for stuff.
I said, I know I said I wanted to speak to people, but I'm not ready for that. How many people? I go, we get about 350 people in here. Whoa. And so he kind of pushed me into that. And I told him I'm never going into a church. Not me. I'm not going to church. Right. I don't want to go there. He goes, no, you're just going to come speak to my church, but you're not going to attend.
This is a great sales job.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So he tricked me in there.
Yep.
And I stayed there for about 2 or 3 years.
That's hilarious.
And through the 2 or 3 years that I was at the family in Roseville, Matt and the family the whole church just pumped us up. I mean, he got me into his kids' school, which was my third. I started 3 schools my first year. Started with 3 schools, turned into 18. By the next year, it was 40. By the next year, it was 60, and now it's over 150 schools. But Matthew Oliver was he went to the PTC board, and he said, Sammy's coming in. And they said, who's this guy? We don't know who he is. And so he really, there's some people that really stick their neck out for you and they see things in you. And so, he tricked me into going to church. And I got a lot of healing from that because
That's cool.
I was able to realize that he was always with me the whole time. You can hate as much as you want, but that's not going to change that side of it. And I think that we also can help the people that we help.
Yeah.
You can think whatever you want of me. I'm not telling you this because I want a reaction from you or or because I want you to like me. I'm telling you this because it's true.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was the only way I'm able to do what I'm doing now is because when you're with people all day long and you're seeing this and feeling that energy and that connection, it's God. There's no other way around it.
Right.
I mean, unless you just want to say that everything's coincidental and just live your whole life that way. And, but no, you know the feeling and it's a feeling unlike any other. And so he was a big part of that. And I love that guy. Yeah.
Well, and I think, and seeing what you do and again, when I was there last year, I knew nothing about you other than that my kids were excited,
Yeah.
and I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm hearing the message that's being communicated. And again, I think I'm such a believer, like Lance stated a minute ago about helping people see their potential. Cause I think that's part of, just recognizing that you're made in the image of God is recognizing that there is possibility and potential inside of you. And I think, we get all mixed up with that in culture that it's like your potential and your calling doesn't mean like, oh, you're going to go be famous and do something. But it's like God has placed worth and value and meaning in your life.
Right.
And I love, so much of what your message does to me is I get it's a public school. It's not a faith-based program. It, all that other stuff, but it's you're awakening in kids, I think, this idea of their value and their worth. And to me, that's part of recognizing that you're made in the image of God is that You're valuable. You have something to contribute.
Well, and it's powerful in schools. Like you don't have to say the word God in schools. And if you do, it actually probably would be more damage than anything because you're going to offend somebody.
They have preconceived notions.
So I always feel like, God is love and I'm able to demonstrate my way of loving on these kids every day of my life in the way that I was meant to do it. And so I do feel like kids feel that, without saying any words. When you sent me a message, you said, can you share a couple stories?
Yeah.
And before we're out of time, I was going through because there's so many things that, what do I want to share? Well, the most recent one was a mom who reached out to me. Her son, I think he's in 3rd grade, 2nd grade. He just finished going through chemo.
Wow.
And, being that young, I don't feel like it's terrible that kids don't deserve to go through that at such a young age. I mean, anybody, but you can imagine a kid going through chemo.
It just breaks my heart.
And I called them up at the end because, I was talking about the water bottles. Well, sometimes I give them to kids who weren't working very hard but are going through a lot of emotional struggles.
Yeah.
And they just they need somebody to say, you bring them up in front of the kids and all. And then, sometimes there's kids that are going that they've shown so much just perseverance. Well, I bring this kid up and his mom sends me a message. She goes, "Thank you so much for bringing Austin up and giving him that award. I watched the video and it brought tears to my eyes. It meant more to him than you could know. Austin just finished battling cancer and is finally starting to feel good again. Today, when I picked him up from school, he was so excited, and he told me that he helped all of his friends not give up like he didn't give up during his treatment.
Wow.
And he was so unbelievably proud of what he accomplished today. Thank you for making him so happy." And, just thinking about he says, wow, I didn't give up during treatment. I didn't give up at school, and I'm helping kids. And, he's overcoming so much at a young age. So that was a story that I really,
That's awesome.
I
That's
love.
a God thing.
Yeah. And then there was another girl. She's in high school now, but I called her up. And at the time that I called her up, she was very standoffish. I pick her out of the crowd and, most kids are excited, but she's standing up there like, I don't like you.
Yeah.
Why are you?
How dare you?
How dare you call me up? But she's standing up there, and at the time, I'm saying, hey, I just want you to know whether you liked it or not. I just want to tell you that I believe in you and blah, 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 and you're amazing. And so she sends me a message 3 years later. And she says, hi, Sami, you came to my school 3 years ago. I was very standoffish and I didn't want to do anything. And honestly, at the time, I just felt pointless, along with everything else going in my life. You called me up at the end, and I don't remember exactly what you said, but I remember it being the only time I had felt validation, that I didn't feel like a background character in my own life. That encounter started my journey into satisfaction with my life and who I am, and I just want to thank you for that.
Dude. Wow.
So, you think about what kids are thinking at this age. They're thinking, I'm a mistake, I'm not good, I'm not okay. And so, you hear stories like that because you never know. And if you don't get a reaction from somebody instantly.
Yep. That's what I was just going to highlight. So one of the things that Pastor Brian and I always joke about is that when you go and speak to youth, you better have your security blanket with you, because dang, you can sit there and just be like pumping out all your passion and energy, and they're just staring at you like, what's wrong with you?
What else you got?
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, it's not making any difference. And then afterwards they walk up, they're like, dude, changed my life. And you're like, no, yet I did not. Your face doesn't show anything. Yeah. And so once again, you said 3 years later, right, that this girl connects with you. Once again, I want to encourage, because we don't have a whole lot of kids watching this program and listening to this program, mostly because of Pastor Brian. But anyway, that we have a lot of adults. And when you invest into your children, you don't always get an immediate reaction. You don't always get the validation back. And a lot of times we only do stuff when we get validated for it.
Yeah.
I just want to encourage just what Sami was talking about, that, man, when you pour into your kiddos, you're not going to see it right away, but it is sticking, and it matters, and it is powerful. So yeah, super great story.
You're planting these seeds, right?
That's it.
And you never know when they're going to grow.
Nope.
Yep. Playing the long game.
And it's not up to us.
That's for sure. Yep. So, hey, before we go, if people want to learn more about what you do, or they want to connect with you online, where do they go?
Well, I document my journey in schools as much as I can on my Facebook, Instagram. It's Sami Kader, or Sami Kader of Sami Circuit is my Facebook, and then Sami Circuit's my Instagram. And then my website, www.samicircuit.com. It's SAMI.
Yes, SAMI. I want to make sure we get that.
And Kader's with a K, Kader.
Yep. And anytime that I'm going out doing events, I send emails, things like that, and I'm in family nights in schools, 100 schools, 100 nights a year, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
So.
All right. Very cool. Well, Sami, thanks so much for being part of the program. Really enjoyed our conversation. And more than that, thanks for what you do. You're making a huge difference. And hey, as a dad of kids who have been to your program, I love that my kids are learning from you and hearing from you, and to know that's happening all over the place. It's pretty awesome. So Thank you, Lance, for the time and being back with us on the program. And thanks to all of you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're inspired by Sami's message. And we'll be back with you again in 2 weeks for another episode of Engaging Culture.
Thank you for listening to Engaging Culture, a podcast by Bridgeway Christian Church. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and leaving a review on iTunes. Thank you so much for listening. Music is used under the Creative Commons license and is provided by Dexter Britton.